Welcome. So, in this video, I just want to speak briefly about classroom management and give some ideas on how you can maintain control of your classroom from the moment students walk in until the bell rings and it's time for them to transition to another class. So, a common misconception about classroom management is that it takes place when students are seated in the classroom and the teacher is trying to get their attention so they can get on task for what they need to accomplish during that period. The reality is that classroom management begins before the students have even entered your classroom. How your class is laid out is a big part of maintaining control of your classroom. So, for example, when I set my classroom up, I want to make sure that I am able to easily move around the classroom at any point in the class. And I also want to create a few points in the classroom where if I stand there, I can see the majority of my students, what they're working on their computers, and also listen to what their conversations are. So there are a couple points in my classroom that I can stand and I can see the screens of all my students, or I can see the screens of most of my students. And it's easy for me to walk around up and down the aisles, walk behind students, to the side of students, to the front of students. So you want to make sure that you have a classroom that allows you that mobility, because that's going to make your presence known in the classroom and will help to reduce the amount of disruptions that you'll get from students and help them to focus and stay on their task.
So another good part and an important part of classroom management is having your students know exactly what they're to do the moment they cross that threshold into your classroom. You want to make sure that you have established expectations and a routine for what students are to do, because the last thing you want are for students to be sitting at their desk and waiting for you to tell them what to do. And this is important because you don't want to give that time for students while you're taking attendance to, not be focused on what's going on inside the classroom, but rather what's going on outside of the classroom. And then you've got to take time to try and get their attention and get refocused so that you can complete what the objectives are for that particular day. So you want students to walk in and just start working on their own without being told to do so. And one way that you can do this is giving them a bell ringer to do. So for example, in my class, students know, regardless of whether it's a standard class or an AP class, that they've got a bell ringer that they need to complete. And they come into class, and whether they're in standard or AP, they go to the table, they get their bell ringer, they sit down, and they start working. And so there's not this time where you have a number of students just hanging out, talking, being disruptive, and you're going to take attendance. And so there's going to be more time where that's going to take place. And then finally you're ready to teach, but they're not yet ready to learn. And so if you give them something to do the moment that they come in, then it will be much easier for you to make that transition once you take care of what you need to in those first few moments of a class, and get the students to be on task and remain on task and be able to make transitions from individual work to whole class or group, or however you have your class planned out for that day. And then, because not all students are going to complete their work at the same time, I also make sure that students have something to do while we're waiting for everyone else to finish up. So for example, when students finish that bell ringer, they know that they then have a vocabulary assignment that they need to go and complete and work on while students are still working on the original bell ringer. And this, again, it keeps them focused and on task with what is going on in the classroom, and prevents them from being disruptive to the other students that are still trying to finish up with their bell ringer. And so now, when those last few students have finished their bell ringer, it's easy for you to transition into your lesson, because they can stop that vocabulary assignment and they can now give you their attention, and you can start going through your routine on what you want to accomplish in class that particular day. And then finally, there's always going to be instances where you finish early and you have a good 10 or 15 minutes left, and you really don't want to just have that be free time for students. Because again, if you give students free time and don't provide them with something constructive to do, they're just going to start talking, getting on their phones, being disruptive, and it can really be challenging to maintain order in the classroom if you allow that to happen. And so I'm a really big fan of the Edu protocols, and one of the ones that I like to use towards the end to take up that 10 minutes is a protocol called Thin Slide. It takes no preparation on my part. I just provide the slide deck, and they just give a word or a phrase and a picture of what they learned that day. And so they're given an opportunity to be creative, to go ahead and show what they learned that day. And then I give them 5 minutes to put it together. And then really quickly, in 5 or 10 seconds, we go around the room and every single student explains what their word or phrase was and what kind of picture that they had put with it and a brief explanation about it. And that take up a good 10 to 12 minutes. And again, you're allowing students to have creativity, and you're allowing them to show what they had learned, which is a good way for you to go ahead and assess how well they had understood the lesson for that particular day. So I hope you found this video beneficial. Again, it gives you an opportunity to just try a few things at the beginning of your class and a few things at the end of your class to help maintain good classroom management throughout. As always, share your knowledge with your colleagues and let them know some of your ideas and what you are doing so we can all be better teachers. Good luck on the rest of your school year.